What is up, guys, and welcome to a video that's going to be discussing a topic that's been on my mind pretty heavily over the last couple of weeks. So just over a week ago, we got the release of Terrifier 3 in theaters, what is looking to be one of the biggest success stories of movies in 2024, much like the second film was a massive success story in 2022. Super happy for the success of the film. As a fan of the franchise, I just love seeing what these guys do, and I can't wait to see what they do next. But like pretty much any time Terrifier becomes a major topic of discussion in the horror community, there's another topic that gets brought up that gets debated extremely heavily inside of my circles especially, and that is, can horror films go too far? Is Terrifier going too far? Are there things that we shouldn't put in a movie? And you know, the discussion about the violence in horror films and the effect that it has on its viewers and whether or not this should be allowed or outlawed and all the different in-betweens, this is a discussion that's been going on since the beginning of horror films, and it will probably never completely go away. You go back into the 70s with extreme things like The Exorcist and some of the controversy that brought with churches and religion, and then you have the satanic panic era in the middle of the 80s with the rise of slasher films and people and parents and government even going after horror films and heavy metal music alike. In the 90s, you had a big discussion post-Columbine about the effects of horror films and video games on the youth, and then you had the torture porn era in the 2000s with the rise of Saw and Hostel, and all that gets kicked back up again, and now we find ourselves sitting back at the debate table with the release of Terrifier. And I have a lot of passionate views on this topic, but you guys let me know your thoughts as you listen to this video. If you want to chime in on certain points, or I would prefer listening to the entire thing and then chiming in, let me know your thoughts down below, and let's try and discuss this and see where everybody else lies on this topic. But Terrifier, especially over the last couple of years, has been the franchise that has been the beacon for this conversation more than any other franchise, because it is a very boundary-pushing franchise. It is a movie that is intended to go too far. It's intended to find the line where most people say you cannot cross this, tiptoe over that line and put out a movie and see what happens, to the point where the last two films have almost turned a marketing campaign out of the reports of people passing out, throwing up, and everything else, people protesting outside of the theaters, and it's worked out very well for them financially, you got to admit. So for me, you have Terrifier, that is a slasher franchise that's going for extreme amounts of gore. It's cranking up the depravity. There's some sexual stuff in there for sure in regards to like the Vicky character, especially in Terrifier 3. But for the most part, it's the kill scenes that elicit this type of response. It's the amount of gore, the amount of violence, the amount that certain kills are drawn out, the pain of certain characters is drawn out to a torturous degree. And, this is something that is either for you or not for you, for very understandable reasons. If somebody walked up to me and said, I can't watch Terrifier, like those movies don't do anything for me, I don't understand the appeal of extreme amounts of gore and torturing people, and I don't get the entertainment value with that, I'd be like, okay, I get it. Like, that's a stance that a lot of people have taken with slasher films and even horror in general for decades and decades. I get it. If it's not for you, it's not for you. There's things that aren't for me. Musicals aren't for me. I totally understand why people like them. They don't really get much of a response out of me that's positive, so that's not my thing. This isn't yours? Cool. And I wish that is where the conversation would stay. Acknowledging and owning when something is not for you, but at least respecting the fact that it is for other people. You can have your opinions about who would like certain things, and that's fine, I guess. It's a little judgmental, but nonetheless, if you don't want to watch something, you don't have to watch that, and I don't understand taking it far enough to go, not only do I not want to watch it, but I don't think you should be able to watch it. I don't think that this should even be available for you to make the choice of whether or not it's for you or not. And that has been ramped up quite a bit here in my comment section on Twitter and a number of other places since the release of Terrifier 3, and the main subject that is driving that is the fact that, spoiler alert if you have not seen Terrifier 3, there is children who get killed in Terrifier 3. Multiple children. And children do belong to the horror taboo list, if you want to call it that. Like this unofficial list of things that we're not supposed to do in horror films. The main two dealing with slashers is always kids or pets. Dogs and cats. Don't let us see that. Otherwise, no, your movie is terrible. And so it's been ramped up significantly since people have seen Terrifier 3, since people have heard reviews describing what happens in Terrifier 3, a movie that literally opens with a kid being dismembered by an axe. Off screen. You hear it, you get visuals of what's happening, and you see a little bit of the aftermath when the mom opens up the door, and then there's a sequence later on in the film where multiple children die, but it's all off screen. It's all pretty much suggestion. It's all not really showing you the actual act, more so than showing you the aftermath. And very important to point out in regard to the Terrifier franchise and Art the Clown being the one doing all of this, none of the kid kill scenes in this film are those classic Art the Clown, like drawn out torture scenes, which is the one thing that I was extremely afraid of. And the one thing that I was hesitant, like, oh God, please tell me we're not going to go there. I was genuinely nervous that when I watched this film, we were going to get a hacksaw scene or a bedroom scene with a child. And for me personally, yes, that would have been too far, and we will get more into that later. But this isn't the route that they took, and I think they were very smart to do that. It's all off screen, it's all through suggestion, and you just experience some of the aftermath. And for a lot of people, that's too much. Totally cool. I can respect that. But this is where some of the confusion sets in for me, and some of my assumption that it's not so much actually the subject matter that you're worried about. It's just you taking a stance against a franchise that you have decided to take an issue with. Let's list off some movies where children die in horror films, shall we? Probably the most classic example, Pet Sematary. In either of the examples, I would say the original is the more graphic and the more disturbing of the two, but you have a very young kid who gets creamed by a truck. And if you watch the original, technically he dies twice because his dad has to euthanize him at the end of the film. You have It, whatever version you watch, predominantly the newer one because it actually shows Georgie's arm getting torn off and bit off by Pennywise as he is crying and wailing and crawling through the street while the rain is pouring and his blood is coming out into the rain on the road and nobody's coming to help him. Pretty sick shit. Don't remember anybody complaining about that one. You have Speak No Evil. Spoiler alert for the original Speak No Evil, by the way. But that film ends with an act of the two antagonist characters murdering the child that was supposed to be their son, and then immediately following that up by having all of the main characters of this film inside of a car. And while the mother and father sit there and do absolutely nothing, the young girl, who is the daughter of the two protagonists, gets held down by two grown men as they cut out her fucking tongue with a pair of scissors and then drag her out of the car to her, I would say, uncertain fate, but she's going to have the same exact fate as the kid that just got killed minutes ago before this sequence. Sleepaway Camp. Multiple kids get offed in that movie. Jaws literally shows a shark devouring a child. Halloween 3. The entire plot point of that film is killing all of the children of the world through Halloween masks. Halloween 2018. You know that movie that so many of you guys passionately defended in 2018? Yeah. Well, Michael Myers snaps a kid's neck in that film and came ultra close to doing something to a baby. And my God, I've never felt so on edge watching a film, wondering, oh God, please don't do that. But luckily they didn't go that far. Hereditary. I would say this was a pretty popular one. Most people were saying that it deserved to get Oscar recognition. The entire plot point that kicks this thing off is a young child having her head taken off by a telephone pole while driving in the back of a car. Trick or Treat. Multiple kids die. Funny Games. Dr. Sleep, another one that a lot of people say is Oscar worthy. And the sequence where Jacob Tremblay gets disemboweled by all of the enemies, all of the antagonists in that film, far more disturbing than anything I saw in Terrifier 3, but that's just me.
Are you gonna hurt me? Yeah.
When Evil Lurks, a big one from last year. 2 or 3 kids get killed in that film. One of them, the mom walking around, pulling his brains out of his skull, and it shows it. The Omen 2. Stakeland. Not many people saw Stakeland. It's a very underrated vampire film. The thing literally kicks off like 2 minutes into the film with somebody looking up into the rafters of their garage, and a vampire is feeding on an infant and then drops its lifeless body. Clown, Devil's Candy, Martyrs, Dawn of the Dead. Remember the zombie baby? I sure as fuck do. The House That Jack Built, The Toxic Avenger. I don't remember if it's the second or the third Feast film, because honestly, I never watched it, but I did see a collection of clips, like some of the most disturbing clips of all time. I don't know why I was watching it, but nonetheless, there's a YouTube compilation that showed it where there's a character that throws an infant to the monsters to let them devour on this infant's body so that he can escape. AVP Requiem. Not a horror film, but Assault on Precinct 13 has one of the most disturbing child deaths I've ever seen. The Blob from the 80s. Megan! Fucking Megan! That little goofy-ass movie that got all the accolades a little over a year ago. Yeah, remember she tore the kid's ear off in the woods? Here's the other one. And so this is one that I can get into because this is near and dear to my heart. And we have Child's Play. Yeah. An entire franchise, most of the franchise anyway, that the entire story is about a serial killer trying to essentially kill a child, take over his body, like kill his soul.
Give me the boy and I'll let you live. Do you hear me? Give me the boy.
And though there's not, that I can remember, there's no on-screen child deaths in that. There are certainly some that are suggested. There are certainly some that we're told about in backstory, like the girl from Curse of Chucky. And you have the TV series where it's multiple children are in the warpath, and the way that that show ended, and who knows if we're going to see anything past it. You have 3 kids that have their bodies stolen and they're put into like little marionettes. Like, I don't know how much worse or better that is than being killed, but nonetheless, an entire franchise that is based on the idea of killing kids. So what's the point that I'm trying to make here? The point that I'm trying to make is that if that is a hard line for you, if children are in peril, or if they, if they have a very dark fate in a film, if that is the cutoff for you, totally understand that, because depending on the execution, it's a cutoff for me. But this is not the first movie that has done this. It is far from the first movie that has done this. I just listed damn near 15 films, and I promise you, I haven't even scratched the surface. If I wanted to make an hour-long video, I could go through every single one. But there are so many examples out there of slasher films and psychological horror films and demonic possession films where violence of some sort has happened to young kids. And not really until Terrifier 3 have I seen the community as a whole, a section of the community as a whole, stand up and say, now we've gone too far. There's no reason that this should be done for entertainment, and anybody that likes it is sick. Well, did you enjoy it? Because if you did, I have questions.
Fuck them kids.
There was a YouTuber that was going viral on Twitter for a little bit about a week or so ago, who I don't know, never interacted with them. They might be perfectly fine as a person. I no opinions on them, but they run a YouTube channel that is apparently completely dedicated to the Scream franchise. And they were somebody that was taking one of these hard stances that what happens in Terrifier 3 should never be allowed, should not be entertainment, should not be defended whatsoever. And had a lot of people in support of them, had a lot of people coming at them. And that is another section of irony to me, where I did not list the Scream films, but that is a franchise where the signature killer almost exclusively kills high school kids. You go to Scream 5, there's a scene where Ghostface lures a mother, a single mother that has one kid and that's her whole life, lures her to her death by suggesting that something is going to happen to her son. She gets stabbed to death on the front porch, dies knowing that the same exact fate is about to come to her only child, and it does. That's pretty fucked up. And I think that's one of the best examples for my confusion with this entire debate. Like, let's boil this discussion down to what we're actually saying. There's certain people that are genuinely looking you in the eye, or at least looking at your profile on Twitter and telling you this version of murdering fictional characters on screen is okay. But this one isn't. This one I'm allowed to enjoy. But this one, you're depraved and you're a sicko if you enjoy it. 17-year-old girl stabbed to death in her front yard, gasping for breath, barely able to mutter her mother and father's name, and then hung up in a tree and let her bowels spill out for her mother and father to eventually find. Totally okay. Perfectly respectable entertainment. 7-year-old child chopped up off screen in a very over-the-top comedic type film. Nope, indefensible. To me, it's all or nothing. You either enjoy what slashers bring, you're either there for that type of entertainment, or you're not. This compartmentalizing of what's acceptable, what's okay to be entertainment, and what is problematic makes absolutely no sense to me. Now, to play devil's advocate for a moment, because I did get a couple of these comments that are on the far opposite end of the spectrum. People saying that a Terrifier film can never go too far. Like, there's never a line that Art the Clown can cross that is too much, or that they should question whether or not they should do this. Like, that's the point, is just to do every taboo thing and go as sick as you possibly can. And I don't agree with that whatsoever. And I would say that the filmmakers, Damien and everybody else, would say the same exact thing, because they knew the lines that they were trying to cross with Terrifier 3. There was just a certain boundary where they could cross the line and still maintain the audience's entertainment, the audience's engagement. But if they went too far with it, if they showed too much, if they were too depraved with it, they would absolutely lose people. So arguing that there are no lines whatsoever that most people would agree on is absolutely silly to me. Are there people out there where Art the Clown could literally do anything and never cross a line for them? Yes, I'm sure. But filmmakers still want to make sure that most of their target audience is still engaged with what they're doing. A film that went too far for me, as I've already detailed, is the original Speak No Evil. I was pissed at the end of that movie. That movie fucking infuriated me. I did not value the experience that movie gave me at all. Very well made movie, very well acted movie. I get its appeal. I understand 100% why some people think that it's brilliant. I'm one of those oddballs that prefers the American remake, because while it is not as shocking, while it's not as groundbreaking, while it's not as bold with its ideas, I can at least enjoy that experience on some level. But when you get to the final reels of that movie, I hate what I am watching. I hate what I'm seeing these characters go through, and I'm just angry. So that was a film that crossed the line for me, where I could no longer value my experience watching that film. But you don't see me going online telling people that we should never allow these types of movies to be made. These are things that should never happen in a film. I would never tell the filmmaker who made Speak No Evil, you went too far and you should not have done that. I actually feel the opposite. I feel like horror absolutely needs to push boundaries. Horror absolutely needs to go too far. Horror absolutely needs to look at the lines that the majority of society have drawn for what is too much and test those boundaries, test how much they can get away with. Some will be successful, some will not. But they should always test that, whether or not there's people like me that don't like your film or not. If that's where you feel like your story needs to go, if that's where you feel like your vision needs to go, fucking go there. Because I do not want to live in a world where we all just agree on some sort of set of rules that horror cannot do these certain things. It's one of the reasons why comedy is basically a dead fucking genre to me and to a lot of people nowadays, because as a society, we have put so many boundaries for what is funny, what is not, what you're able to laugh about, what we're not, what we're able to joke about, what we're not. And there's understandable reasons why people believe certain things shouldn't be in comedies anymore. But it is an indisputable fact that movies are not nearly as funny anymore because they're not as risky. They don't have near as much freedom to actually push boundaries and push what we consider to be funny or what we consider respectable or allowable to be joked about and laughed about. And I could count on one hand, and probably have some leftover fingers, how many comedies I've seen in the theaters over the last 15 years that have genuinely made me laugh my ass off. And the ones that have are the ones that give no fucks about the rules or the boundaries. It's one of the reasons why stand-up comedians is one of the only preserved forms of comedy nowadays, because the ones that give no fucks are absolutely hilarious.
You know, you watch comedies nowadays and you're like,
No.
this isn't a fucking comedy. You're not, where's the jokes? Like, where's the bits?
It's bad.
Yeah.
Comedy's gotten kind of bad, huh?
Yeah, it kind of sucks. Yeah.
Movie comedy.
Yeah. There's still good shows and stuff, but like, yeah, movie comedy, it's hard.
Every single joke that has ever been told in the history of forever has offended somebody, but it's also made somebody laugh their ass off. Because while some of us get offended at facing some of the silliness and the ridiculousness that is running rampant in real life, just regular, relatable situations, if we aren't comfortable enough to unpack those and laugh at them in their most extreme versions, which is a joke, then how are you supposed to enjoy life? Genuinely, I don't understand it. But this isn't about comedy, but that's just a very parallel example for me. Once you start putting boundaries and start putting rules and drawing hard lines about what art can and can't be, that art suffers dramatically. Do you really want to live in a world where we have rules saying horror can only go this far? And if we do live in that world, how many horror films do we get before suddenly nothing shocks us, nothing really surprises us, nothing challenges us, nothing scares us, nothing gets under our skin anymore? You go back to Jaws. I guarantee you there was a ton of people that said, you can't show a kid getting eaten by a shark on screen. That is sick. That is depraved. Why would you ever want to do that? One of the most celebrated films of all time. One of the most gripping, one of the most riveting films of all time that is still responsible to this day for making people scared to go in the ocean. A lot of people's favorite example to throw out as greatest horror film of all time, The Exorcist. How many things could you point out in The Exorcist that I guarantee somebody, a studio exec, a fucking focus group, a test screening audience said, you can't do that. You can't put that in a movie. Are you crazy? Are you sick? The Friday the 13th franchise. It battled that fucking stigma the entirety of its run. It's one of the biggest examples of the MPAA just chopping things down left and right, no pun intended, because we can't show that to audiences. That's too far. Sleepaway Camp. Some people don't love Sleepaway Camp, but those of us that do, why do we love it? Because it goes so far. It goes so far past what you would typically think are the boundaries of what you could do in a film that we love the fact that it exists. And it had the balls, again, no pun intended, to do what it did. The Saw franchise. Definitely the most iconic and the most successful long-running horror franchise of the last 20 years. You go past like the second film and you get into things like the Rack Trap and everything that happens for the rest of those movies. I mean, do we want to watch a Saw film where there's rules about what you can and can't do to Jigsaw's victims? No. I sure as fuck don't, and I'm willing to bet a lot of you don't too. Even a lot of you that say Terrifier 3 went too far and movies shouldn't do certain things, I guarantee you, most of you saying that, don't want to live in that world. Which leads me to my ultimate conclusion here, which is I really wish that people would be more comfortable with respecting their own boundaries whilst respecting others. Respecting that difference of opinion. And this, difference of opinion just in general, that's something that I wish a lot of us would see more eye to eye on. You liked a film, I didn't. Let's talk about why. Let's not attack each other for that. Same thing here. It's too far for you. The subject matters too much for you. You have no interest. You don't get any entertainment value out of that. I get it. I respect that. Respect the fact that I do. Respect the fact that for whatever reason, what they do in these movies works for me, puts a smile on my face, makes me laugh at how extreme that it is, and I walk out going, wow, that was a wild ride. Can't wait to take somebody else to it. Respect that. Let's wrap things up with a food analogy, shall we? Because you guys know I love those. I don't like onions. I have never liked onions. As a kid, it was absolutely the devil. If an onion even rubbed shoulders with my food, I was not eating. I've gotten a little bit better as an adult, but still, I do not like onions on my food. I don't like them on my burgers. I don't like them in my tacos. I don't want them in my salads.
No onions, though, okay?
No onions?
They make you fart big time.
If they're blended up in a sauce or something like that, cool. If I don't know they're there, fine. But I don't fucking like them, and I don't want them. But I'm not out there at a restaurant trying to get them to take French onion soup off of the menu because I don't want to order it. I just don't fucking order it. I order something else. You see the similarities there? Do you see what I'm getting at? In conclusion, guys, can horror go too far? Absolutely, it can. There's my lines, you have your lines, you have your lines, and you have your lines. Can they go too far? Yes, they can. But they should. They absolutely 100% should go too far, and they should continue to go too far. Well, that's it for this one, guys. If you enjoyed that, please click over here for all of my 2024 new release reviews. I'm also going to put my ranking of the Terrifier franchise up here if you're here to talk about that franchise specifically. Like, share, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss everything in the future. And as always, remember, opinions are like assholes, but that doesn't mean you have to be.